Last year I sat down for a long chat with Chris Vail, the CEO and founder of NTH Watches. Due to the time difference, I spoke to Chris from my home office, hence the alternate office decor. In a series of 4 videos we covered many subjects watch related. In this video we talk about all things Lume, a subject we much admire in NTH models. Specifically we chat about full Lume dials and explore the different design characteristics on the new NTH Neckin Vintage White Night Diver. As people would imagine, we've got a fairly large stockroom at Gecko, and we have some wonderful watches in it. And I was down in it the other day with my writing colleague, Anthony, and we were rummaging through the NTHs, as you do, and we came across one that we actually hadn't had hands-on with before. And you briefly mentioned there, you try and come up with some fairly unique designs and things that are just that little bit different. And it was the full Lume dial Neckin.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the first thing we did was crack out the UV torches that we had in our pockets. Yes, believe it or not, we do walk around with little UV torches in our pockets.
Very appropriate for watch geeks.
Turned the lights off and zapped the watch, and it's really, really impressive. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because, I think people don't realize just how easy it is to use a term from this side of the Atlantic, to cock up a watch design. And I was recently reviewing, and as it turned out, I'm now not reviewing, a watch that had a full Lume dial. Not yours, I hasten to add. And what they'd done wrong in it was they'd not differentiated the hands enough from the dial. So when I had the watch home here on test and review, at 4 o'clock in the morning when I woke up, all I had was a big green blob, which I couldn't see the hands on. And I looked at it and I thought, how on earth did that get out from a design table, the design stage? It seems like such a fundamental error to me. Thankfully, of course, the NTH is completely different. What was there anything that inspired you to go down the full Lume dial? Because there's really not that many of them out there, so it does make it really special.
There's always a story. So we, prior to NTH, I had a brand called Lou and Huey, and we did a big number pilot watch called the Phantom. And one of the iterations of that was a full Lume dial. And the design initially was a black dial with a sandwich. It was a sandwich dial that was black. We did a big number version and then a non-number version. And then we decided to do a full Lume version. And we were going to use the same hands on each. So traditionally, if you look at like Fliegers and pilot watches, they have black dials. The hands are Lume, but very often the frames of the hands are blacked out. So when we did the full Lume version of the Phantom, we kept the hands the same as the other versions. The hands were lumed, but the frames were blacked out, and I thought that would be enough. And I think in my defense, and in defense of whoever designed whatever this other watch is that you were just speaking about, you're talking about waking up in the middle of the night when your eyes aren't able to focus quickly enough and looking at your watch, but that's not the function of the watch. The watch is, if it's a pilot watch, the pilot isn't sleeping and then waking up and trying to check the time on his watch. The pilot is operating the plane. If you're diving, you're not sleeping, waking up underwater, and then trying to check how much time you have left on your decompression stop. The instance of waking up in the middle of the night and wanting to check your watch for the time is not real. I mean, I guess it happens in the real world. That's a practical concern. But when it comes to thinking about a design, you're really thinking about it more in terms of how legible is this design when somebody's walking down the street at night and they happen to look at their wrist, not how legible is this design when somebody wakes up at 2 a.m. and their eyes can't focus very well immediately. How legible is it then? Waking up in the middle of the night is really not primary in our list of concerns when we're designing a watch. That said, I did get a lot of criticism, not a lot, but I got some criticism about the full Lume dial Phantom that also had lumed hands. People did say the contrast would be better with blacked out hands. So when we did the Neckin full Lume, first off, the other versions of the Neckin, the modern blue, the modern black, they're black dial or blue dial white markers with white frames, white hands with white frames. To invert those colors and make a full lume dial, logically you would make all black dial, or all black markers, all black hands. You wouldn't lume the hands. I mean, logically, again, if you're just inverting the colors. So that's kind of, I think, what happened there is it just seemed obvious to us that if the other versions of the Nakin have white framed hands, this one ought to have black framed hands, and there shouldn't be lume on the hands. The frames should just be completely blacked out, or the dial, the handset. There should be no lume. The hands should just be completely blacked out.
Yeah, and it really works. And I think it's also when you look at, I mean, there's a watch that we all know. It was the Tag Heuer Night Diver.
Right.
My friend Anthony's got one, and I mean they kind of went down, I think, a similar thought process as yourself, because if memory serves me right, half of the hands are black and non-loomed, and they've just got a lume portion at the end.
The Tag Heuer Night Diver, the vintage original version, the one that Timothy Dalton wore in was it Living Daylights?
It was his first appearance as Mr. Bond, wasn't it? Yeah.
Right, so that was where that was the product placement for that movie, was the Tag Heuer Night Diver. So I'm looking at it over here on my other screen. So the one I'm thinking about had Mercedes hands. The frames were blackout, and depending on which version you're looking at, some of them, the neck of the Mercedes hand, the hour hand, was blacked out, but in some of them, no, it had a little bit of a lume patch there. The hands were just black framed, and we actually made a model based on this. We made a model called the Santa Fe with a full lume dial, this same marker scheme, and these same hands. And so that was a precursor to the Neckin Vintage White. And I think some of the feedback we got was, yeah, I get what you're doing. You're making an homage to the Tag Heuer Night Diver. If you're trying to be historically accurate, this is the way to do the hands. The way you did them is correct. But functionally, I like it better with blacked out hands on a full lume dial. So when we did the Neckin Vintage White, I think it was a mix of rational thought, reasoning our way to the end result, but also we didn't have to think very hard about it because it was just kind of automatic. You take a modern black, you invert their colors, you end up with blacked out hands.
Well, I mean, I think it works really, really well. Many thanks for watching this video. Check out all 4 in the series with Chris, and don't forget to subscribe to the WatchGecko YouTube channel and the magazine for the latest news, reviews, and conversations.